G'day everyone, welcome back to another weekly tipping video on the channel. Going to be going over my tips for round 10 of the 2025 AFL season. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you do go on to enjoy today's video, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so let's go over quickly how I went over from round 9, and I got myself a 7 out of 9. Pretty good score, I feel, in the end. The tips I did get wrong though was tipping the Saints over the Blues. Blues defended really well in this game and definitely deserved the chocolates, and I also did back in my Swans against the Dons, but Essendon really strong first half, saw them deserved winners in the end, and meanwhile getting the rest of the tips correct. Collingwood over Fremantle, 16 points I did, but the actual margin was 14, so only 2 points off. Tipped the Hawks over the D's. D's gave them a bit of a scare. Suns over the Dogs. The Crows over Port Adelaide, Richmond over West Coast, the Giants over the Cats. So roughy tip there, correct. You'll take that every day of the week. And how about this final game? You couldn't lose with this one given it was a draw, so you get a tip correct no matter who you tipped. A quick look now on my tipping competition leaderboard update. Just the one person got themselves a full 9 out of 9 score. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐎𝐥𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 with a total score of 9 out of 9. You'll love to see it. And as for who is leading my competition, we actually do have a three-way tie in first place with 𝐶𝐶's, 𝘼𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 and Rhino's Raffles, all with a total score of 79. Let's now begin with the tips for round 10. First game up, Thursday night, we have the Suns taking on the Hawks at TIO Stadium up in Darwin. So back-to-back home games here for the Suns, and they just continue to really build a strong fortress up there in Darwin. Got the chocolates against the Dogs last week. Front half game was excellent. Their pressure was really outstanding. Will pose as a tough challenge for the visitors, that being the Hawks heading up to this game with resting a couple of players. I know Gunston and 𝘬𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 are two of those players being rested. Hawks are coming off the back of a win over the Demons. The first three quarters I'd like to forget though, they were well beaten around the ball, but were able to surge and bury the Demons in the end. 𝐓𝐴𝐵𝐿, one of the best on ground, so he's going to be key in this matchup. Try and get on top of that midfield battle against the Suns, especially up there. The humidity's tough, so they've really got to bring the physicality, I think, the Hawks. 𝐻𝐴𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 as well is off the back of two pretty good games as well. Can they give them a bit of drive, try and outdo Gold Coast with some of their ball movement? Overall though, it's just hard to go against the grain when tipping the Suns up in Darwin. Did back them last week and they did get the job done. And as I said before, I think their front half game and their pressure's looking real ominous. Hard to tip those Victorian teams up in Darwin as well because the humidity can affect them definitely. So I'm going to go the Suns here. I think Hawthorn will really bring it up to them, but Gold Coast I just feel too strong up in Darwin. So I think they'll pip the Hawks here and win this one by 16. Friday night footy now, Group game. The Swans taking on the Blues at the SCG. Sydney, well, geez, they are looking like a side that might be tapering off a little bit this year. Just when you watch them play, I think the grand final defeat has definitely hit the squad mentally. They just don't look as connected and as sharp as they were last year. They're having phases of really poor patches of pressure and just allowing the opponents to move the ball way too easily, and they're getting caught out a bit defensively at times. But at the same time, they've had a handful of losses now this year when they've been in winnable positions. So honestly, their record could be a bit better, but this is a great chance for Carlton to try and strike off the back of a really good defensive performance against the Saints. Haynes is really starting to stand up. 𝘼𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵's been one of the comeback players of the year. 𝘬𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵's so hard to beat one-on-one. And Sydney as well have probably one of the worst of forward lines form-wise and player names-wise in the competition. A lot of inexperience, a lot of depth players there. So if Carlton can control that, dominate the skies in the back half and really rebound well from their back half too. They've been a sneakily good side when the Blues are on, being able to move the ball from the defensive 50. I think Carlton are a decent chance here. Both teams have been a bit inconsistent with their contested footy, so who could really stand up on Friday night? I think that would be one of the key areas of the game. I think the Blues are a genuine chance for this game if they can really bring their turnover game like against the Cats. Sydney have been exposed a bit off turnover. I think the Blues could really get them in that area, smack them around the footy with those big-bodied mids. But I'm just feeling a Sydney bounce back here. I know they were poor against the Dons last week, but just have that feel in my gut that back home, the SCG, fairly good record over the Blues at home as well. They're a side from them that still has plenty of upside, but they just really need to show some connection with the ball movement. If they don't bring that, I think the Blues can pip them. But I'll back in the Swannies here. I'll back in their ability to move the ball, because when they bring that, they can still be a very dangerous team. So going to go the Bloods here in a close game of football. Go Sydney by 10. For the Saturday games now, first one up, 1:20 PM, we have the Pies taking on the Crows at the MCG. These last few games, Collingwood and Adelaide, they've been some absolute classics. The Crows a number of times now have been on the wrong side of that ledger, so could they finally get the job done here? They've got 2 wins on the trot, I think 2 pretty good quality wins as well, so they'll definitely be heading into this game with some confidence. The Pies will obviously be getting some names back after getting rested. But just once again, Collingwood show why they are one of the best defensive teams in the comp. They just guarded the corridor so well against the Dockers, didn't allow them to move the ball freely through the middle, and blitzed the Dockers through their ball movement off the turnover. Very efficient. I think they had about 35 inside 50s for 12 goals. Adelaide at times have shown a bit of defensive struggles, so if Collingwood can really bring that overlapping handball game and really cut up the Crows' defence, you probably back them here. I think if Adelaide are able to bring some ferociousness around the football, get their turnover game up and going, as they've been one of the best turnover sides this year, I think the Crows also a sneaky chance here. And Adelaide's key forwards against a strong Pies defensive outfit should be an interesting one to watch as well. Just don't have the confidence though to back in the Crows. I think they could make this definitely an upset, but just the Pies at home, hard to go against here. They just play their best brand of the MCG with how they're able to move and how they work as a team. And just in key moments, you just back them to get it done, the Pies. So I'll go the safe tip here with Collingwood. I think it'll be a close game as always. We'll go the Pies by 8. Next game up at the Adelaide Oval, 4:15 p.m. we do have Port Adelaide taking on the 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿. Port currently sitting in 13th, 2 losses in a row, and yeah, they're just looking a bit soft. That's just what I'm really noticing, especially defensively. But it was a bit of a response last week against the Crows. They were able to smack them around the footy and the clearances. A bit of the same old long bombing though at times, so they've really got to eaten up their inside 50s. The 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿's defence under a bit of injury clouds at the moment. No Jack Henry. I think 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿 will be back for this game. Not too sure yet on 𝐸𝐿 either, but you know, the 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿's defence isn't looking 100%, and the Giants are able to really get them out of the back with some nice chains in their forward half. So, look, if Port Adelaide bring the heat and really just not allow the 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿's to move the ball freely from the back half at the Adelaide Oval as well, I just feel like Port can definitely get up for this game. I know they haven't been great this year, but Port down to the Adelaide Oval is always a tough test. No doubt the 𝐼𝐴𝐻𝐿's will be looking for a bounce back after their loss against the Giants. To be honest, probably should have won the game. They did have a lot of missed opportunities. But watching the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's as of late, it feels like they're not getting enough from those bottom 6 sort of players. You know, Ollie Henry, those sort of types have been fairly quiet. So if they can get more from those role players, the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's, and bring their ball movement to Port, have been known to struggle with sides being able to move the ball, especially over the top, out the back. I think the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's, you back them here, but just feeling a response here for Port Adelaide at the Adelaide Oval. I feel like you've always got to have a crack at some of those against the grain Port Adelaide tips, because when no one expects them to win, they'll sometimes pull out a win. So going to back in Port Adelaide here. I feel like their midfield can get on top of this game, and through their front half pressure, if they really bring the heat, I think they'll find a way to get enough scores. So Port Adelaide, and I guess a little bit of an upset here over the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's, and we'll go them by 6 points. Then another 4:15 p.m. game here, the Giants against the Dockers at ENGIE Stadium. The Giants off the back of a really impressive win against the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's. I thought what they're able to do in the front half, some really clever disposals here and there. Delaney came on as a sub and really made an impact, but it was the Jesse Hogan show once again. Off the back of 7 goals, basically clanked everything that came his way. Riccardi was really solid there too. They got a bit more from Toby Green as well. So it was just what they needed, the Giants, and I thought their pressure and intensity really lifted after a disappointing last 3 weeks with 3 losses in a row. So back at home here against the Dockers, where they've just been hit and miss this year. They've been able to show games where their ball movement's really strong and their midfield gets on top. But at the moment, the Dockers seem to be struggling against some of those big-bodied midfields. And when you look at GWS led by Tom Green, could they struggle in that area once again? And I felt their midfield did do enough around the trenches. They did beat Collingwood in a lot of key areas in that game, but just their conversion inside 50. We always see that with Freo, a bit of the same old, just the really poor inside 50s. I think Collingwood had almost about 15 intercept marks in the defensive 50. It was poor, almost 30 plus inside 50s over the Pies too. Conversion just has to be much better if there are any chance here against the Giants, because if you have some poor entries and you allow Sam Taylor, Iden and Buckley just to rack up intercept marks, the Giants are a side that can really bounce well from the back half if you cough up the ball in dangerous areas and just have those poor shallow entries. So Dockers need a response in that area. It's just hard to go against the Giants at home. I feel like they've got a pretty decent record at home over the Dockers. They did pip them last year too. And just off the back of that win against the 𝐼𝐻𝐿's, I feel like that could give them some real good confidence. And they're a pretty tough team to knock off at home as well too, the Giants. So we'll back them here, the home team over the Dockers, and we'll go the Giants here by 13. Then for the sole Saturday night game here, we do have the Dogs taking on the Dons at Marvel Stadium. This one I feel like is a tricky sort of one to tip. I think the Dogs are the better team on paper and the safe tip, but Essendon did really surprise me last week. Their first half was absolutely outstanding, although Sydney's pressure was really poor. Their handball game's been really noticeable this year. They are a very high hand pass side, and they just carved up the Swannies through their slick hand pass game. They controlled the ball well through their defenders and through the back half. Just in general, their disposal was really good and absolutely blitzed the Swannies with how they moved the pill. So could they bring that against the Dogs? We all know the Western Bulldogs at times they can struggle when sides do bring some quick and really good controlled ball movement. But the Doggies are the side in form here. I know they did lose against the Suns up in Darwin, but not really much shame in that. I thought they did enough to win. They had some good performers out there. I mean, O'Donnell was really solid as a defender, but 𝐿iberatore, Richards obviously stuffed the stat sheet. They were very impactful, but up forward, they sort of had their issues. Daunt was disappointing. You'd expect a bounce back from him, though. I think the Dogs' forward line, as of late, apart from that loss, has still been fairly good. Back under lead at Marvel, they usually play their best brand of football here. Interested to see how the Dons do go in this game. I feel like they could be a sneaky chance here. Could they really get some dominance out of the midfield? Because numbers-wise, they have been one of the better midfields or contested footy teams in the competition. And a lot of players with under 50 games playing some pretty solid football at the moment. But I think just under lead at Marvel, it's hard to go against the Dogs here. I just think they can really get their midfield strengths going and have a bit more of a better response from their forward line. So go the Doggies here. And I think maybe a close game for 3 quarters, but I think the Dogs' scoring prowess runs away with this and wins it by 20. We do have the Tigers taking on North Melbourne at the MCG. Well, this one, a very interesting game to tip here. You could really go either way with this one. The Tigers, they got the job done, obviously, last week against the West Coast Eagles. Really good quality game. This one, just back and forth. Had its ebbs and flows, but the Tigers ran away with it in the end. That Tom Brown tackle, what an absolute corker. And then when you look at North Melbourne, their last few games have been much better. They got very close within Port Adelaide. They were so close against the Dons where they came back charging. And once again, they've been in these scenarios 3 games in a row now where they've been trailing, yes, but they've been in very winnable positions. They've had the momentum and they got really close. If 𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐿𝐻 was able to kick that goal, they probably would have won the game against the Lions. But they're just getting a lot more of a response around their midfield. They were able to shut down 𝘧𝐼𝐿𝐻 and just really get some ascendancy around the football. Tristan Cherry probably had one of his best games of the season, was an absolute animal in those ruck contests, fought back for possession, was able to win a few clearances of his own. Very tricky one to tip here. I think both teams' spirits will definitely be sky high for this one, looking at this one as a winnable game. If Richmond bring more of that pressure over North Melbourne and the intensity for more of the game, I think the Tigers can win this game of football. Tom Lynch off the back of a really good game. I thought he competed extremely well in the air, so could he cause some havoc for those North Melbourne defenders? But I'm going to back in the Kangas here just because I feel like off the back of their last 3 games, there's going to be plenty of fire in the bellies and they're just wanting to finally eke out that win. So because of that, I'm going to edge my tip here towards the Kangas. So I'm going to go the Kangas in this one by a close margin. The Roos by 5 points. Next game up, we do have the Lions taking on the D's up at the Gabba. Melbourne off the back of a win. They'll definitely want to lick their wounds with disappointing 4th quarter against the Hawks. I thought it was sort of like the same old Melbourne performance from 2023 odd where their midfield felt dominated, but the scoring shots, it was absolutely diabolical. They should have been easily leading at half-time and potentially 3/4 time as well, but the goal kicking really let them down. And it's 99% tipped here for the Lions. I feel like a bit more should probably back in the D's here. I think that could be a sneaky chance given what Brisbane did front up last week against the Roos. But most likely, I don't think it's anything too concerning for Brisbane. One of the more mature and more easier teams to trust in terms of tipping in the competition. Back at home at the Gabba as well. Definitely one thing to say though, I think Melbourne's midfield the last few weeks has really been up there now with their clearances and their contested footy. So could they outdo Brisbane in that area? No doubt take them a long way if there are any chance to win this game of football. But Brisbane at the Gabba just don't have the confidence to back in the D's here. They should get it done with their prowess in the front half, especially at home where they play usually their best brand of football. So Brisbane to do number here on the Demons, but I think this one could be close. But Brisbane's 4.5 prowess, as I said before, runs away with it and is too good for that Demons defence. We'll go the Lions here by 15. And the final game of the round, we head over west with the West Coast Eagles still seeking their first win of the season against St Kilda. Now this one, very interesting. The last few times the Saints have played here, they have been some close games. Surely they look at this matchup and they say, hey, we've been close the last few times. Could this be the first win? I was very close on going them against the Demons, and their first half was good. They were leading, but the Demons did get on top of that game in the second half. So Can they get a bit of fire in the bellies? That'd be disappointing, that loss last week. I thought they really gained some ascendancy in the third quarter, got a lot more of a response from their midfield, and how they're able to move the ball from the back half as well. You think the Eagles will continue with the 2 extra rucks here against Rowan Marshall, who has been in some good form as of late, been really physical with grabbing out of the ruck. As for St Kilda, the effort was there against the Blues last week, but yeah, their use inside 50 I thought really let them down, played into Carlton's hands a wee bit too much, and yeah, a few of those younger midfielders did get found out a little bit, like Garcia and young Boxall. It's hard to point the finger at them, but Carlton's midfield on paper, very strong, big bodies too. So I think for the Saints this year, there's just going to be good and bad performances. So can they minimise and eliminate those bad performances as much as possible? There's just been a bit of good and bad with the Saints. They have weeks where their midfield looks just dominant. And looking at the Saints as well, usually when they're winning games of football, it's from dominance around the football. No doubt they could do a number here on the Eagles midfield, but over in Perth, the Eagles fighting for that first win of the season. I do like them here, and I think the spirit's going to be up, but I just think the Saints, they're a hard one to go against sometimes, especially with tipping them this year, and I think they just will find a way through quality of a few of those stars like 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐼𝐴 and Sinclair. Wide open ground of Optus too could really get their ball movement going from the back half, where they can be fairly dangerous. So gonna go the Saints in this one, but not with a heap amount of confidence. I think the Eagles could finally get their first win this season here, given it's an opponent they do play usually fairly well against, but I'll back in the Saints here. Away from home, I think they've just got a bit more of that quality through a few of their ball users. So the Saints to win this one by 8 points. So overall, they're my tips for round 10 of the 2025 AFL season. Let me know your tips down below in the comments section. Going to be going with a few upset tips. Let's hope for another cracking round. It was a beauty back in round 9. Almost every game was over, or under, I should say, sorry, 10 or so points. So let's hope for another cracking round, and hopefully you did enjoy, everybody. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, fellas.